Notice is hereby given of a regular meeting of the City of San Angelo Development Corporation to be held on October 26, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. at the East Mezzanine of City Hall, 72 West College Avenue, San Angelo, Texas, for the purpose and consideration of the following agenda items. One, good morning, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. It is 8:31. And Director Barrio, will you please lead us in prayer?
Yes, I will. If you would bow with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to live in this fine city of San Angelo, Texas. Let everything we do today be with focused minds and all of our learning that you've given us plugged into doing the best we can for the city of San Angelo and its citizens. Bless the entire city, Lord, with prosperity, with health, and with your ever-loving care. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Number three, public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Board members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The board takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have any public comment?
Good morning, Board. My name is Dave Erickson, Director of the Small Business Development Center at Angelo State University, and I'm here today. What's a very fun thing for me to do is introduce a new staff member. I'm usually here introducing, or Desiree is introducing our new student employee, because they come and go, they graduate and they have to leave. But here today, I'm going to introduce a new regular employee, a business advisor, Angelina Osorio Torres, who took Alejandro's place. He went on to a new opportunity, and so we have Angelina here. She's going to talk a little bit about her. She's an ASU grad, and we're just real tickled to have her with us. She's done a great job so far. So, Angelina.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I just wanted to let you know that I started working at the Angelo State University Small Business Development Center in August, and it's been a wonderful experience. My background is I'm a business owner. I provide nonprofit consulting services, and then, my father was a business owner. I speak Spanish, and I've been a long-term client of the ASU SBDC. And so when the opportunity arose to, be part of the team, I couldn't turn it down. It's just been an amazing experience, and now I get to enjoy it from the other side. So first client and now a team member, so it's been a wonderful experience, and I look forward to serving all of the budding entrepreneurs and existing entrepreneurs here on out. So thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning, welcome. Angelina, I remember you, I don't know if you remember me, but you did some consulting for the West Texas CREO organization a couple of years ago.
Yes,
so I remember meeting you there, and I was impressed with you then, so welcome aboard.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Do we have any other public comment? No? All right, awesome. We'll move over to the consent agenda. Number 4, A, consider approving the necessary corporation disbursements. B, consider approving the September 28, 2022 and October 11, 2022 meeting minutes. And C, consider approving the re-subordination of the Affordable Housing Assistance Program lien at 2026 Shelton to allow clients to refinance the housing loan. Do we have
Max,
yes.
if you would please, just to let you know, I noticed that in the background there was a memo, and so there needs to be a little bit of editing. It's just on our titles, that's all there is, but I've already informed Bob Salas in regards to this, but that'll be changed. But other than that, there's nothing else major.
Okay. Okay. So do we have a motion?
I move to make a motion to accept the consent agenda items.
I'll second that motion with the editorial changes Nora just mentioned.
Okay, we have a first and a second. First by Director Ceballos, second by Director Barrio. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to number 5, regular agenda. A, consider approving the September 2022 financials. Presentation by Tina Diersky, Director of Finance.
Good morning, Board. Tina
Morning.
Diersky, Director of Finance. Going to go over your year-end unaudited financial statements. We ended the year over our budget for revenue by just over $1 million. and did end the year on a positive note with September sales tax numbers up 11.38%. And then in October, we saw an increase of 16.67% over the same month from the prior year. And then for the year as a total, we were 4.14% overall, up from the previous year. Moving on to your balance sheet, we continue to monitor cash flows and investments. We're seeing interest rates between 2% and 3% now on average, so that's, we're seeing an uptick with that. Our unassigned fund balance is now about $4.6 million, and then we do have $5.1 million set aside for projects. And on the income statement, you'll see here that revenue was over budget by 10%. We did have some expenditures that went out for the city services agreement, as well as some other administrative type expenses for the month. And on the balance sheet for the ballot side, we have unassigned fund balance built up now of about $6.1 million, which is up from $4.7 million last year. And then on the income statement for the ballot side, again, over our revenue budget, 10%, and then some payments went out for debt service, affordable housing, and the water rights payment for the Fort Stockton water rights. That's all I have, unless you have any other questions
Cool.
for
Tina,
me.
yeah, I did want to comment on the 11% jump in September sales tax revenue is pretty impressive, and it was the best September we've had in the 4 years we have over here. So what do you attribute that to?
That's a good question. We're all wondering, you know, why, and then in October, it was up 16.67% over the prior year. I think we just have a fairly strong economy here. We're kind of isolated with our top employers being, you know, government-type organizations, and so I think we just have a stronger economy. But as far as year over year, I don't have a good explanation for you.
Yeah, no, I was impressed. I was kind of surprised by it. I'm like, wow, what's
Yeah.
going on? Everyone's talking about the inflation and everything, interest rates going up, and we've got the best month we've had. So
Yeah?
that's
Dr.
awesome.
Jones, did you have?
Yeah, I think inflation certainly played a role in that. You know, many of us realize that the reported inflation rate of 8 or 9% may not be reflective of what we see in our personal household budgets when we shop and buy the things we use on a regular basis. So there's a certain percentage of that bump that I'm certain is due to increases in prices rather than an increase in the level of sales activity, so.
Where you're seeing money spent on taxable items
Yes.
in place of other items that might have been purchased.
Yes, or even if they're buying the same number with that higher price, that's going to bump that up as well. So you'd have to drill down to see how much of that is buying more
Inflationary
items
based,
and how
too.
much of that is just we're having to pay more for them.
Yeah,
But from the perspective of the corporation, it's all good, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Any other questions for Tina? No? All right, so do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second.
All right, we have a first by Director Jones, second by Director Barrio. Any discussion? All those in
So,
favor?
public comment on action items?
Okay, all right, so do we have any, we'll open it up for public comment. It is 8:39. Do we have any public comment? No? Okay, we'll close it for public comment. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Motion carries.
Thank
Thank you, Brandon. Cool. We'll go to item B. Consider approving the proposed Coastal DC meeting calendar for 2023, presentation by Nora Navarez.
Morning, Board. Nora Navarez, Economic Development Assistant. I have proposed here our 2023 calendar meeting schedule, but as you'll notice for the meetings in November and December, I've bumped those up to the third week. Now, it is possible those could change because we are actually running into a little bit of a situation right now for this year's November and December. But that I'll talk with you later in the meeting about those dates. But these are dates that I have verified to make sure there's no conflict with holidays or spring break, so we should be good, other than the November and December.
Cool. Any comments from the board?
I'll make the motion that we approve the calendar.
Second?
All right, we have first by Director Barrio.
Thank you.
second by Director Ceballos. Do we have any public comment? I got it, I'm on it. Any public comment? None? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Nora. We'll move on to letter C, public hearing regarding a project under chapters 501 and 505 of the Texas Local Government Code to utilize sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $75,000 to Rosenberger Site Solutions LLC for a project related to business enterprise that create or retain primary jobs. Presentation by Bob Schreeman.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is a public hearing that's required under Section 505 of the Municipal Code. Anytime the board intends to spend money on an economic development project, we're required to post public notice, and within 60 days of posting that notice, have a public hearing. Basically, this Rosenberger, you may recall, is a manufacturer of electronic communications components. They employ about 100 people nationwide. They're relocating a portion of their manufacturing operation to San Angelo. They'll have about $570,000 in equipment that'll either be purchased or relocated. They've leased a facility now on Tractor Trail. They have approximately $250,000 in tenant improvements, and they'll employ between 25 and 30 initially, and there's potential for significant expansion. Come on. The proposed incentives that we presented to the board last time, the board approved, moving in tenant improvements or capital investment, if you will, $30,000, job creation at $1,000 per full-time equivalent. We're incentivizing for up to 20 FTEs at $1,000 each, so that's $20,000. And then tax reimbursement ad valorem tax for the city portion only of $25,000 for a total incentive of $75,000. I'll answer any questions the board might have, and we can do the public hearing.
Any comments? No? All right. Okay, we'll open it up for any public comment. 8:43, do we have any? No? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to D, update regarding the Economic Development Director position and search process, presentation by Michael Dane.
Good morning, Board. Michael Dane, Acting Economic Development Director. A few weeks ago, committee comprised of Max, myself, Brian Kendrick, the Human Resources Director, Daniel Valenzuela, City Manager, and our Mayor, interviewed 2 candidates for Economic Development Director. Daniel directed me that we would maintain those 2 candidates in play and that we would consider hiring a firm to seek candidates for the position. The firm we've started talking to is actually our Human Resource Director has started talking to, specializes in economic development type candidates, placement of those type candidates. So we will probably move down that road. If there is a cost associated with that, we would use salary savings associated with the vacant positions to pay for that and go from there. We're looking for the 2 candidates we interviewed are still in play. There's not been a decision made up or down on those 2 candidates, but it looks like we will be moving toward that headhunter for assistance.
Any comments?
What is your expectation at this point in the timeline for the search, given that you're going to retain a search firm to assist in that process?
I would hope that we would have them under contract very quickly, and they would have to help me with developing an expectation for that timeline. I would suspect that 60 to 90 days would be about the quickest, but you may know more about that than I do, about utilization of headhunters for executives. So in the meantime, as long as things don't get too excited around here, Nora and Bob are doing an excellent job of holding the fort down, and we're very fortunate to have them. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, Michael. All right, we'll move on to item E. Consider authorizing an expenditure not to exceed $1,500 for the Business Resource Center's 10-year anniversary event to be held on December 15th, 2022. Presentation by Nora Navarez.
Morning, Board. So this item, we are coming up to our 10th anniversary. It's in December, but yesterday I was thinking about maybe because, we're juggling a lot going right now, that maybe we would celebrate in March. So I'm still thinking about December or March. But in order to do that, we just want to have a light celebration, and that's what we're proposing here, just a little celebration to celebrate our building. We've done amazing things there, so I think it deserves to be celebrated, so.
Any comments or questions?
Nora, when did the BRC officially open for business?
Officially in March, I want to say 9th day, do you remember? End of March, okay, end of March. But I know myself and Bob, we moved in December. We moved in December, and then we had a grand opening in March. So we thought, well, either we will mark it in December or we'll celebrate in March, either way. So we'll see.
The March celebration, we may well have a new director on board. So
Yes, and
there's an
that was
extra
another
benefit to
thing.
that.
So we could have our new director, should we have one by that point, it'll be included. So maybe that's a good suggestion. Okay.
All right, so do we need a motion to approve?
Second.
All right. So we have a first by Director Ceballos, second by Director Jones. Do we have any public comment? All right, any discussion by the board? Not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Nora. All right, item F, consider approving a resolution in support of an application by the Trans-Permian H2 Hub LLC in response to a Department of Energy funding opportunity, Regional Clean Hydrogen Hubs funding opportunity announcement dated September 22, 2022. Presentation by Bob Schliemann.
And good morning again. This item is basically a resolution in support of an application to the Department of the Environment for a funding opportunity. We were approached by Roger Horton, who I'm going to introduce here in just a minute, who's their sort of local representative, but they're putting together an LLC of a group of basically financiers, I guess, that would to apply for one of these grants. The grant program is establishing between 6 and 10 regional clean hydrogen hubs across the U.S. And the folks we're talking to are looking at building, I think they actually have something in progress in Fort Stockton. But there's the opportunity for a lot of spin-off from that. It's a hub that would serve basically an area from San Antonio all the way to El Paso and encompass the Permian Basin and sort of the Trans-Pecos area. There's up to $7 billion available for the program. Of course, that'll be for the 6 to 10 hubs. Their initial response is due November 7th, and it'll establish as I say, a hydrogen production facility serving the Permian Pecos region, and there are potential for spin-offs for San Angelo. What we're proposing is non-binding support with no financial obligation at this time. Basically, this is their first submittal. They'll submit a draft proposal that is something of a very generalized proposal at this point. So we're asking that the board authorize the board president to sign not only the resolution, but also any non-binding or other related non-binding documentation that the firm may require as part of their application. And again, it's non-binding and there is no financial obligation at this point. I'll ask Roger to come up and he can maybe explain it a little bit more.
Good morning. My name is Roger Horton. I have a consulting company, Shea Transportation Consulting, and I've been retained by MMEX Corporation and the South Plains-La Mesa Railroad to do work in this area. Some of you probably know me from the railroad. The MMEX Corporation has been around for quite a while. It's a development stage corporation. They haven't put a shovel in the ground yet, but they've acquired about 1,700 acres of real estate near Fort Stockton. The site selection process for that site was based on the amount of water that was available, access to green energy power, and access to the Texas Pacific Railroad. The Texas Pacific Railroad basically splits the property in half. AEP has power lines, heavy power lines that run over the top of it. There's a natural gas pipeline that runs through it, so you can see if you're going to develop any type of refining process, that's the place to be. And it's in the middle of nowhere. There's no neighbors to complain on this one. At any rate, though, MMEX is a separate entity from this Trans-Permian H2 hub. MMEX is developing a ultra-low sulfur diesel and gasoline refining process there, and they're going to develop green hydrogen and blue hydrogen all in one facility. The blue hydrogen, we have a partner that I can't really name right now. It's a major oil company that's helping set that up. The partner for the green hydrogen is Siemens Corporation. And the refineries, the gasoline diesel refineries, are going to be put together by a company called Polaris out of Louisiana. And so they're moving through, it's complicated on a good day to try to put all that together at once. Well, as this is getting closer and closer to fruition, the Inflation Reduction Act appeared. And in the middle of that, they created this $7 billion for hydrogen hubs to be placed around the United States. There'll be 6 to 10 of these, actually. They're going to range in subsidized, the subsidy amounts will range from $500 million to up to like $1.25 billion, depending on the size of the entity, location, complications, everything that goes along with. So our company, I say ours since I represent them, our company is probably about 2 years ahead of the curve on green hydrogen production. The example I can best give is that the feedstock study for the green hydrogen electrolyzers is an 18-month process, just to work out the feed studies. So this opportunity appeared with the Inflation Reduction Act, and for whatever reason, instead of the lead time that the federal government normally throws out there of a year or two to make the initial application, November 7th. I mean, I don't know the date that the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, but it hasn't, from what I remember from the news, it wasn't very long ago, and November 7th is 2 weeks away. So what we're hoping to do is to just get some letters of support from individual communities. And there are facets in this that relate to underserved communities, wherever there are some poverty issues, possibly. But at the same time, they have to have the infrastructure and they have to have the wherewithal to pull this whole thing together. That makes West Texas very viable for this, especially since planted square in the middle of it, we have a development stage hydrogen production facility already moving forward. The thing I want to stress, I'm talking to each community, by the way, but the thing I want to stress is this is non-binding support. I emphasize that because y'all are not obligated to anything, period. You can wash your hands of this tomorrow morning. We're not asking for a dime of financial obligation. We're not asking for any kind of subsidy. We're not asking for any tax incentive. None of that stuff is on the table. Maybe down the road, there might be some requests for tax incentives if the facility is going to be built in San Angelo. There are 2 items that we're considering that I'd rather not talk about right now, but San Angelo is a key component in this entire process. And that's pretty much what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I'll be happy to answer any questions I can.
Yes, Roger, thank you so much for the presentation.
Sure.
You mentioned a possible facility in San Angelo, just so that everybody's clear. What kind of facility would that be?
One would be resource collection, and the other one would be a manufacturing facility.
Okay.
So there's that possibility out there. What are the present benefits to Transpermian H2 Hub of our support?
The best way I can describe it is that by being a part of the entity when it's originally proposed, in other words, getting on the radar screen at the for the initial proposal, that would make San Angelo engaged in every possible advantage that might come out of the Inflation Reduction Act. You would suddenly be on the radar screen, so to speak. Now, mind you, it helps support the overall hub. That, I might add, MMEX is just a component of it. We just happen to be a hydrogen producer in that hub. Once the hub itself was formed, it would become its own entity. But the advantage is it puts us on the radar screen, and it puts us in an information collection. Is that a good way of putting it? Information collection position.
So best case scenario, if this plays out, what might we see that would benefit City of San Angelo citizens going forward?
Probably I'm stuttering a little bit because I could answer that question directly, and if I answer it directly, it wouldn't be appropriate for the NDA I've signed.
Understand.
But the bottom line would be a manufacturing facility that would employ a couple of hundred people, and a resource collection facility that would probably employ another 30 or 40. And I've kind of pulled that out of thin air, Dr. Jones. You know.
Yeah, understood.
You mentioned. Sorry. Okay, got a green light now. You mentioned the availability on the property of rail, power, water. Quick overview of the process, possibly?
I'm not an engineer. I think you are. At any rate, the facility that would be built at Fort Stockton, That one would take, it would take natural gas out of the natural gas pipeline, put the natural gas through a reformer process or turbines, however that is, and they would spin the natural gas into hydrogen and what other elements come out of it.
Okay.
That would be considered blue hydrogen because it was going to be, the carbon would be sequestered. It'd be captured. On the green hydrogen side of it, those are, I don't even begin to know that process, but it boils down to big tanks of water that someone puts an electric current through at a certain voltage, and it separates the oxygen and the hydrogen, and you either capture both.
Yes.
And the only discharge from that is a little bit of water. What makes it green is the power that's going to provide those electrolyzers is going to come either from a green energy offtake or a 150-acre solar farm that'll be built on the property. That makes that green. On the oil side, on the oil refining side of it, it's a modular oil refinery. I mean, they'll build it in Louisiana, they'll put the thing together, and if it works real good, they'll take it back apart and rebuild it in Fort Stockton.
Awesome.
What comes from that is that a city like San Angelo, for example, would have these, and I hesitate to use the word spin-off opportunities, because it's not really that. Because a spin-off opportunity is something that might happen once this occurs. The industrial development that I'm speaking to that would involve San Angelo would be a direct feed into that facility, if that makes sense. It wouldn't be like, somebody's going to open a trucking company and which is fine, which is good. Love trucking companies, even though I'm a railroad guy. But at any rate, this would feed directly into that facility. Okay.
Thank you for that.
And so then, if there is an approval from this board, what would be the next step? Does that then go to city council, or?
That's what I think would happen,
Okay.
if I'm correct.
There's a separate support letter that will be reviewed and possibly approved by council. So Costa DC will be taking action and support, and then city council will take separate action and support, or not, if they can't speak for them because they haven't seen it yet.
Right.
One of the reasons that we're doing that is we're approaching actually the 4 major cities that would be in that hub, if you kind of looked at it there. And we're splitting it up between economic development and city support and actually chamber support, so that each one of those entities becomes party to the application. So then each one of those entities down the road somewhere might find something that's of interest to them in particular. So they're not bound together.
Well, I will make the motion that we endorse this project and authorize Max to sign anything he needs to.
Do we need to ask for public comment from anyone else?
Good, yeah, absolutely, before or after. Do we have any public comment? No? Okay.
Second the motion, then.
Okay, so we have a first by Director Barrio, second by Director Ceballos. Any discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item H, or actually G, discussion of and possible action on appointing a committee to discuss and review the City of San Angelo Administrative Service Agreement between the City of San Angelo and the City of San Angelo Development Corporation. Presentation by Michael Dane.
There was some discussion at the last meeting about the possible appointment of a subcommittee to consider the administrative services agreement. And so Nora confirmed that Mr. Barrio would like to have that on the agenda, and so we placed it on the agenda for your consideration.
Okay.
This was for the bylaws.
Bylaws?
No, we're on G.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I got the slides out of order. My bad.
We're on G, Max.
Okay.
There we are.
Yeah.
There we are.
No?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's H. No, that's I.
Yeah.
We may not have a slide for G.
Yeah, we mean,
Are we on bylaws or administrative services agreement?
Administrative services, G.
Item G.
How do we get these out?
Yeah, I don't
We're
think
missing
there's a
one.
slide for G.
yeah, or there's not one.
Okay. Item G,
Yes.
consider the appointment of an administrative services. So,
Right.
Is creation of this, appointment of this committee covered by our current bylaws at all? Do we have any
Yeah,
guidance?
so the board or the president can appoint standing or special committees. So y'all can take it as a board action, or Max, you could just appoint a committee if you'd like.
As a spin-off of last month's meeting, it just made sense at the time that we follow through and review this agreement as well. So I would like to recommend, Max, that you appoint a committee.
Okay.
And with that, simply because the committee that's already studying the bylaws has really touched on many of the topics, it's a natural progression that we move on after the bylaws project to go through the administrative services agreement using the same board members as that committee. It's my recommendation.
So maybe do a motion to create the committee, and then with Max to appoint the committee members.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we create the committee.
Second?
All right, so we have first by Director Barrios, second by Director Jones. Any public comment? No? Any discussion?
I would just add that it makes sense to continue from the bylaws committee. There's a lot of overlap, I think, between both agreements, so that will be helpful.
Okay. Well, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. And then we can move on to,
So point of order, would Max need to appoint those individuals today?
or we can do that, I think.
He could, I mean, I don't think that has to be like a official action in the meeting.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
just
All right.
assign those, yeah.
Thank you.
We can just move on. Okay. Sounds good. So we'll move on to item H. Discussion and possible action regarding a new appointee to the Bylaws Review Committee for the City of San Angelo Development Corporation. Presentation by Nora Navarez.
Morning, Board. Okay, so on this, you may recall that the committee consisted of John, Dr. Ceballos, and Chris Evans. And because Chris has already resigned, didn't know if you wanted to appoint someone to replace Mr. Evans. So that's why I put this item on the agenda.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We need to replace former Director Evett. I would be, if he's okay, to appoint Director Jones in that endeavor, if he's interested.
I'm willing to serve in that capacity.
Okay.
we have already been victimizing him.
That's what I've heard. So, yeah, if that's good, then we'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved?
Second.
So again, point of order, Can I vote? If not, we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, I would say, Max, that's probably just your appointment.
Okay,
I mean, if no one objects to it, then I think we can leave it at that, probably.
okay, we can leave that as it is and move on to item I then.
Just officially adopt.
All right? Cool. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Unofficially or officially?
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item I, presentation by the Coastal DC Bylaws Review Committee and discussion of the committee's proposed revisions to Coastal DC bylaws. Presentation by Bylaws Review Committee and staff.
So I think I'm actually going to take this one. Since our last regular meeting, the bylaws committees met twice. And at the last regular meeting, we did have a draft with some revisions, some of which were, I think, the committee's still on board with. But our last meeting was just yesterday. And so there are a couple items that probably need some more work and some direction from the rest of the board. So I wanted to go through those. There were a few cleanup items. We had some redundant provisions about like meeting time, place, location, and so we're just proposing to clean that up and have it all in one spot in the bylaws. Also, the bylaws used to require like a resolution to change the time, place, location. I don't think you need a formal resolution to do that. I think adopting it like we did our calendar is sufficient just by motion, so that was one of the proposed changes. There's several places in the bylaws that talk about city staff performing officer functions like the treasurer and the secretary, and with regard to the investment policy that is done each year. This kind of goes along with the administrative services contract, that if council approves a different arrangement, the committee thought we wanted to fall back and to say it'll either be city staff unless it's approved by council to have like an outside entity or individual perform those services. So thought it'd be good to have that in there. And then the other two big topics, and this is what we want discussion and direction on, are expenditures of the corporation and making that easier for minor like administrative expenses. So if the BRC needs drywall repair or they got to go get office supplies, right now every one of those expenditures are going to you guys as a full board and then going to city council. The local government code requires that city council have oversight, but what that looks like isn't really specified in the code. So one of our proposals would be having it consistent with the city purchasing policy. Also making sure expenditures are budgeted. So if there's been an approved budget, council's also approved that budget. And then having different levels based on like what can the director approve, what needs to come to the board, but maybe doesn't need to go to council so long as it's consistent with that purchasing policy. So right now, the city purchasing up to $25,000 a director can approve. And so the economic development director is a little different because he's always had to come to the board for any expenditures. So I think one of the possibilities is having it where up to a certain amount, the director can approve it. And we're talking about things outside of the project expenditures. So the projects, regardless of amount, those will still come to you guys. But maybe allowing them to approve up to $25,000, which is what the city purchasing policy does, and then maybe beyond that, have a combination of the board and city manager approval, 25 to 50, and then city purchasing requires over 50 to be approved by council, and that also has to go through a bidding process for most things. There are exceptions to that. The development corporation does not have to bid things out, so we wouldn't have to do that. But that's kind of the starting point for a bigger discussion of how y'all would want to set that out.
Any comments or feedback?
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, a lot of these recommendations are to just give the ability for the economic development director to be able to act the way the other directors across the city. So we're not proposing anything outside of what is common practice. But it allows for a quicker speed of business for minor things.
And Max, because today, well, Clifton Jones sat in on the bylaws review committee meetings, officially appointed today, but we kind of knew he was a shoo-in for that position. But basically, you're the only board member getting read in on this today, and the public, and the members not in attendance, who could watch the video as well. In light of the many things that were discussed last month, I feel personally that this is very consistent with good government and our oversight of the taxpayers' money. The city manager being plugged in from the perspective of the finance approval rather than an operational oversight of the board makes good fiscal sense. And Brandon, thank you for the presentation, by the way.
Yeah.
You explained it more concisely than I ever could.
But I'll have one more item. I just figure we'll take that after this discussion. If y'all have any direction on if y'all are good with that, I mean, I've got some revisions going, but it probably needs some tweaking. So we'll, of course, bring back like a draft that shows all that.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, great work.
Okay. The other big item was appointment of what we're calling the executive director, which is the economic development director. And it kind of goes with what we just talked about. We were talking about what powers that person would have. It started with expenditures, but it also led to discussion on appointment and what board input the board would have on selection of a director, or the executive director, the economic development director. So there was some proposal about having him on the selection committee with the city manager, and that the challenge is ultimately it is a city employee, subject to hiring and firing by the city manager. But of course, that person also reports to this board and takes direction on what you guys say. So I think there was some interest. Max, you're currently on the selection panel, and so I think the committee kind of wanted your insight into how that's gone and if you had any ideas on it.
Okay. No, I think it went well. As Michael has stated earlier, we had a couple of interviews and so forth. I think it was a good panel, a rigorous kind of interview process for each one of them. And yeah, I think it's all right. I'm curious to see if we have any other candidates through that other firm.
Yeah, I'd want to give my opinion 6 months after we've hired somebody.
Yeah.
But obviously, involvement is good, and we struggled with how much veto power, how much strength to include there, and, you know, I don't have the same perspective that the board members do, so I think my advice is still the same, that y'all should include what you think is appropriate for the board, and we'll see what survives the council scrutiny.
And one other thought, I think Director Ceballos mentioned this, with the administrative services agreement, that committee you just created. I mean, that contract really outlines the tasks of each department. And so maybe, I mean, that's how y'all get the services of the economic development director. So maybe that's a consideration for that committee rather than the bylaws. Because again, the bylaws are really operation of the board. And so if council did approve a process, yes, how do y'all want that process to work out? But maybe some of it can be addressed in that contract.
One of the big reasons we had a lot of discussion on this is the way the bylaws exist now, there's no formal process where the board would be involved in selecting the economic development board. And one of the comments I made, I said every board I've served on, that's what the board helps do, right? So that's the conversation that we've included, trying to formalize that process through the bylaws. But the real discussion is how much involvement do we want to have?
Right.
You know, one thing would be to be consulted as a part of it, another would be to have consultation and maybe approval. So that's where, you know, we would like maybe your thoughts, you know?
No, I think, well, the makeup of the panel that was conducting the interviews, I think, you know, the way I guess operators would each have you know, kind of a input into that, the candidate and that approval, I would think, you know, equally. I mean, there were several of us there, so I mean, I think having representation, at least by the board president, obviously the mayor, city manager as well, I think it was a good, diverse panel of candidates and of interviewers. I think that were very vested in the process.
Just to add some clarity, this board does not want to get in the business of hiring or firing and making decisions of employment. It's more of a checks and balances.
Right, absolutely.
That's really the purpose.
Well stated.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Max, as a participant in the current ongoing process for identifying, hiring a new executive director, in that capacity, are you serving as an ex officio member of that panel? Or do you feel like you have a vote as to whether individual candidates move forward or do not move forward in that screening process?
I mean, we've done those, but I mean, as a participant in that process, I feel equally a part of that as well.
So you feel like you have a vote?
I would think so. I mean, obviously, no decision has been made, so I haven't had to use that to this point. But I feel that if we were to cross that bridge, that my input would be valued.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other discussion?
I think that's all I had. I mean, the next step, I'd kind of consolidate some of these revisions and maybe meet with the committee one more time before we brought back a final draft.
That sounds good, Brandon.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well,
Thank
then,
you, Brandon.
Thank you. All right. Well, then moving on to item J. Consider appointing a committee to evaluate and review the marketing proposal. Presentation by Michael Day.
My understanding is that we've been, have already been talking about marketing proposals for the next year. We've had 2 companies interested. When those were brought forward, we had staff who had a connection with one of the companies, not a positive connection. We feel like staff should not be involved in the decision or evaluation of the 2 companies. And so I feel it's important that the board should make the recommendation and the decision about which company to go with. And the staff should facilitate the process, but the board should make the decision. And so our recommendation is that a subcommittee be appointed, that the 2 companies make their presentation to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee bring a recommendation to the board. And the board make the determination for services for the next year. We'll move ahead in whatever way you see fit, but that provides an opportunity for each company to make their presentation without the bias that, at least at that time, existed or appeared to exist with staff.
I have a question. So, I mean, I understand, I'm not privy to the relationship or how that would work, but my fear is we're sort of setting a precedent that we're going to have to start getting into all business decisions when, you know, that's sort of part of the staff. I don't mind approving or reviewing, but the way you phrased it, it's more like, hey, well, the subcommittee should do it, and then the subcommittee says, picks which one.
It's evaluating, it's professional service. It's evaluating which service you believe brings a vision consistent with the board's.
Well, let me backtrack. Maybe I'm not making myself clear. It's more, having been on the board a short time, do we do this for other professional services agreements or not? If we do, great, but if this is like kind of a first case scenario, I'm just a little hesitant. I'm not saying that we should do it for a special case, but it's,
Good
you kind of
questions.
set a precedent, that's what I'm saying.
On the city side, if we hire an engineer, we put out a request for qualifications, and then we interview engineering firms, submit proposals where they submit what their qualifications are for the type of work that we're proposing to do. And then we select, we interview and evaluate their qualifications and make a selection based on their qualifications. While this is not strictly that type of situation, I'm viewing it through that type of lens, that we have two firms, both appear to be competent, both appear to be qualified, and both appear to be interested. And so in an effort to remove any bias or appearance of bias for one or the other, one of them actually, I think, has an office not far from our office. Is that correct?
Actually, they weren't. They just recently moved.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So to remove any appearance of bias, I was hoping to create a board subcommittee to evaluate and bring a recommendation to the full board.
Okay.
If you would like a different process,
Yeah.
we would certainly be open to that.
I was just gonna ask, so the way the process worked prior, the two firms went through like the RFP?
I'm not sure how the
Oh,
COSA
how it
DC
was
did it
done.
in prior years.
Well, so my pushback would be to just start the process new, right? I mean, from your end, from the staff end. And then if there's an issue, well, then maybe we can review it. But I think we're trying to correct something that probably doesn't need to be corrected, because we've
Okay.
had changes. But the process really never starts with this board, so we just start the process new. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I don't know, I would open to other thoughts.
So in the past, when reviewing these proposals, that would have been done exclusively by COSA DC staff, and then they would have brought a recommendation to the board? Is that how we proceeded in the past?
Well, I will tell you, in this situation, I was a part of the review. We approached two businesses and asked them if they would be interested. And I told them what it was that we were looking for, what our needs were, and what we were visioning here. And then from that, they proposed a marketing proposal. And both provided that, and they both provided it in a timely manner. And then we reviewed those. So with staff changes and all, it was just that we thought it would be best to go ahead and bring it, and maybe you would like to review those proposals, since I do have those documents, and I could send those to you all and show you what it was that what I had requested for.
How did that go in past years?
In past years, well, the one thing is, we did the same. We just put it out there, and whoever wanted to submit a proposal, they would just review it, and we just reviewed it in-house.
I have a question. So, and I assume that the proposals are probably less than the higher consideration of funding that has to go through all the checks and balances, correct? It's a smaller amount that would be, be able to be approved by the director for what we're proposing.
Yes, if
See,
there was anything more, then definitely I would bring
Right,
it
it would
back.
go through that. And see, that's why I'm very hesitant to take this on, because we just made a statement, we don't want to get into the business of hiring and firing. We don't want to get into the business of selecting vendors, and, we're more oversight. That's how I feel. I don't know if I'm maybe reading the situation
Well,
wrong.
I share your sentiments. It also makes me wonder, I mean, we do employ the staff to handle certain administrative services on behalf of the corporation. And my question would be, is this not part of the services that we've contracted with the city to provide for the corporation?
I think it would be, but I think what we're saying is this is a special case, where we didn't want that bias to cloud the end result. So if your direction is for us to go ahead and make that decision and bring it back with a recommendation, I think we're happy to do that.
Absolutely, that's not a problem.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
In the prior staff review, that seems to have been tabled at this point, am I correct? Was it a close competition, or was there a clear advantage to one party over the other?
It was pretty much clear from one party to another. I mean, based on, at least on my opinion, I could see what was presented, so I could see why.
Okay. If it was clear, I have to question, why is it coming to us to be evaluated again? And why is it coming to the board level rather than simply proceeding with the staff recommendation based on the prior review?
Just to give the board
Okay.
that opportunity to look at that and see if that was what.
Being an exceptional case with staff changes, it sounds like even a committee is going to see the same things that staff did see, but I don't know that. So as an exceptional case, let's go ahead and establish a committee. I'll make the motion that we establish a committee, receive those presentations, and make that selection. Feel free to vote against me.
Well, and while that's being mulled over, so would a committee need to be established, or could those presentations just be shared with the board, and the board could submit, feedback to staff individually?
If the board deliberates, there needs to be a certain process, which would involve the creation of a subcommittee or action at a board meeting. And so I would say we would probably want to adhere to that. But we will, if you would like staff to handle it, we will gladly handle it and bring you an action item. That's not a problem, but.
Is the recommendation to create a subcommittee a path that would allow the board to review these competing proposals in a confidential manner that would be more difficult to accomplish in front of the entire board?
The reason we talked about a subcommittee was that if two proposals are aired in the meeting, one in front of the other, one might be given an advantage versus the other, depending on who goes first. So we thought we'd do that apart from one another, where one could not see the other's presentation. And
I know we have a motion on the table, but are we allowed to do discussion now?
Well,
or
it
what
hasn't
are
been seconded. just-
Okay,
yeah,
so here's, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep pushing back on this, but to create this committee, we don't have a process of how to score these, right? I mean, when we do an RFP or we do a grant application, there's a whole rubric, you get this many points, that many points. So you're asking us to create a subcommittee that would then either have to create a rubric or some type of vehicle to score these versus just an opinion. We're adding layers of bureaucracy when, to Dr. Jones' point, if our services agreement says you guys make the decision, make the decision.
if you're comfortable with that, we'll do that.
That's where I stand.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Well, then,
All right,
Any
we're good.
action taken,
We're
or
good. We've got our
you got
direction.
direction?
We're good. It's not a problem.
okay. Sounds good. Okay.
Thank you.
Well then, thank you. Then we'll move to closed session. It is 9:35.
Max?
Hey, Max, yeah, we need to read the.
Oh, yeah. All right, let me read
caption.
that real quick. Executive session under the provision of the Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D. Exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.087, to discuss or deliberate commercial financial information that the board received from a business prospect, and to deliberate the offer of a related financial or other incentive concerning a BREP incentive for project excavator, a wholesale equipment dealer. Okay? It is 9:36. We are in executive or closed session. 3, we are back from closed session. We'll move on to item number 7, follow-up and administrative issues. A, consideration and possible action items discussed in closed session if needed, and there were none. So we'll move on to B, announcement and consideration of future agenda items.
So, as I stated earlier, November and December meetings, we're having a little change. So for November meeting, November the 16th, we are planning to do our business plan announcement, and this room is already occupied on the 16th at 9 o'clock. So our proposal is for 1:30. If you would check your availability for that time. November 16th at 1:30.
Same day, just later.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Same day.
I can do 1:30 that day.
Great. Great. Oh,
Checking. Looks good for me.
Works for me.
perfect. Okay. So on that day, like I said, I'm pretty sure that our goal is to have a light meeting, then make the announcement at the end of the meeting so that we can have a reception for our business plan winners. Okay.
So you'll send an updated Outlook invite?
Yes, sir, I sure will. Okay. December meeting also, you might want to look at your calendars. I had scheduled that meeting for December 14th at 8:30, but I've been informed that this room here has been blocked for that entire week. So we would either have to have our meeting the week prior, the 6th through the 9th, one of those days, or the 19th. And I know we're getting close to the holidays, so I wanted your input as to what day would actually work better for you.
You said Monday the 19th?
Yes, sir.
I could do Monday. I am out of town that previous week, 6th through the 9th.
Okay,
Monday works for me.
19th works for me as well.
okay.
And we could keep it at the same time, 8:30, right?
And that is my plan.
Well, right,
that is-
tentatively versus if you find.
Yes,
yeah.
tentatively. I will let you know if it has to go later in the morning, or afternoon, but I will let you know. Okay?
Sounds good.
Other than that, that is all I have.
All right, awesome.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then any other items? If not, then we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you, everyone. It is 9:46. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Max.
All right, thank you.
You.